Today we're working on 3.2, solving quadratic equations. My camera is running low on battery, so we'll see how far we get, but probably this section will be in at least 2 videos. The first thing we're going to do is solve quadratic equations by factoring. So I've got the first one written here for us. We've got x squared plus x minus 11 equals 1. The first thing you want to do if you decide that you want to try to factor it is get one side equal to 0. So the easiest thing to do in this one is just subtract the 1 from both sides. And then we're going to try to factor it. First of all, check to see if anything comes out of all 3 of the terms. There is nothing that will factor out of all 3 terms here, so we'll move on to the next step. If you have a trinomial like this, check to see what is in front of your x squared. We just have a 1 in front of our x squared, so that means the middle term is our sum and the last term is our product. And there's a 1 here if there's nothing written. So what 2 numbers add to give me 1, and when we multiply them we get negative 12. Okay, well 3 and 4 will give me 12, so one of them needs to be negative. It's a positive 1, so the bigger number needs to be positive. So I'll have x plus 4 and x minus 3. And to finish solving, we'll just set both factors equal to 0 and solve. If you ever want to check your answers, you can always, just like any equation that you solve, plug your answers back in for the variable and make sure it makes sense. Okay, but you don't have to check your answers. So let's try another one. Part B, I've got x squared plus 7x plus 10 equals 0. Okay, in this one, the equation's already set equal to 0. So check to see if you can factor anything out of all 3 terms. Nothing factors out of all 3 terms. So we'll do just like we did in part A. This middle number is our sum. This last number is our product. Notice it's in order. It starts with the x squared, then the x term, and then the constant. Make sure you've got it in order before you just put down your sum and your product. Okay, so what 2 numbers multiply and give me 10? When I add them, I get 7. 2 and 5. Okay, so x plus 2, x plus 5. Those are my factors, and now I can set both factors equal to 0 and solve. Okay, let's look at a slightly different problem. I've got t squared equals 2t. Okay, again, first step, set the equation equal to 0. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 2t from both sides here. These are not like terms though, so we'll just leave them separate. So I've got t squared minus 2t equals 0. Check to see if anything factors out of both of the terms here. In this one, yes, a t factors out of both of the terms. So we'll go ahead and factor a t out. We have left just a t minus 2. Okay, you can always check to make sure you did that correctly. If you multiply it back through, you should get what you started with. So there's always some checks and balances here. This one's factored out completely now, so we can set both factors equal to 0 and solve. Okay, in part D, I've got 2x squared plus 13x plus 15 equals 0. This one's already set equal to 0 for us. Let's check to see if we can factor anything out of all of the terms. There's nothing that'll factor out of all three terms, so we're going to go ahead and just go to the next step. This time it's a little bit different though than our first examples. We have a 2 in front of our x squared instead of a 1. But we can treat it exactly the same way. The only thing we have to figure out is the product. Okay, so whereas the product was just that last number in these first examples, now the product is your A times your C. Okay, so my product in this one is 30. And my sum is still that middle term. So what two numbers add and give me 13? When I multiply them, I get 30. 3 and 10. Okay, so I'm going to write x plus 3 and x plus 10. But those are not our factors because we had this 2 in front this time. But all you need to do is divide both of them by 2. You'll divide it by whatever your A is in the problem. And then simplify. If it doesn't simplify, you just put this 2 in front of the x. So our first factor is 2x plus 3. And this one does simplify, so this one's x plus 5. And then set both factors equal to 0 and solve. Okay, so we'll try one more like that. I've got x times 3x plus 14 equals 5. It almost looks like they factored this problem for us, except it's not equal to 0. So if it were equal to 0, it would have already been factored. You could set both factors equal to 0 and solve. But since it's not equal to 0, we need to multiply this back out and factor it ourselves. So I'm going to distribute the x. So I've got 3x squared plus 14x equals 5. And then I'm going to get one side equal to 0, just like normal. So I'm going to subtract 5. 3x squared plus 14x minus 5 equals 0. And at this point, if you want to pause the video so you can try this yourself, it's just like the last one, you can do that. But I'm going to go ahead and finish it up. So I look to see if I can factor something out. I can't. And I've got a 3 in front. So my product is 3 times the negative 5. So negative 15 is my product. And the middle number, that 14, is my sum. What two numbers multiply and gives me negative 15? But when I add them, I get 14. Well, 15 and negative 1. Okay, but remember, those are not your factors because we have this 3 in front. So we're going to divide both of those by that 3. And this one becomes x plus 5. And that one doesn't simplify, so we're going to put the 3 back in front of the x. And now we've got our two factors. We can set them both equal to 0 and solve. And this looks like the perfect place to stop so I don't run out of battery. So I will continue section 3.2 in the next video.